ovals to the demanding road race circuits. Today, from Portland International Raceway, cars return for the first time to the 1909 birthplace of their very first National Points Awarded Series event for the Portland 200. ESPN, your #1 auto racing network, presents Auto Racing 84. Beautiful 62-degree day here in Portland, Oregon at the International Raceway, a raceway not always known for excellent weather conditions. Hello, everybody. I'm Art Eckman, and working with me is Larry Nuber. And, Larry, we've got an interesting situation where the Indy cars are getting off the high-speed ovals and going to the road race circuits. And another statement about the changing of the guard. You know, the names in IndyCar racing were the same for quite a number of years. The names are still the same, names like Andretti and Unser, but we're talking second-generation drivers now, and also the ascending of the road course drivers. They've been good on the ovals, but of course when they come home to the road courses, people like Derek Daly and Roberto Guerrero, strong, always up front here this weekend, also at Portland. And we've heard a lot about the March chassis going into this race, but now we've got 2 Lolas on the front row. Well, only 2 Lolas entered here this weekend, by the way, chassis numbered 3 and 4. I guess you'd say the performance was pretty strong. They're the fastest 2, Mario Andretti and Danny Sullivan, and you wonder, are we seeing the beginning of another March-like domination in terms of the chassis? Our other colleague, Gary Lee, is downstairs, and he's got another element for today's race.
Thank you, Art, and good afternoon. This event will go down in the record book as the first ever championship event contested on Radial tires. They are said to be faster and more consistent than the bias ply. In fact, Mario Andretti, who is starting on the pole, says these tires are good for about 1.5 seconds per lap. If there is a problem, it is in heat retention in the left rear. When the Goodyear engineers made this compound, they went by the old surface. However, the track has now been resurfaced in some areas. This is causing some additional wear and heat generated on the left rear. The operating temperature should be about 250 degrees in the left rear. We're seeing some temperatures well over 300 degrees this weekend. So we'll keep an eye on the tire situation as the race progresses. Art?
Thank you, Gary. And today's Portland 200 is brought to you by world-famous Bardol. Get Bardol, the engine saver. And by Nissan, builders of high-mileage, high-quality cars and trucks for 50 years. And by Coney, the world's finest shock absorbers. Coney, proven superior. And for those who have to work on this special day, this special message.
Forever, John.
Happy Father's Day!
We'll be right back with a starting grid of today's race, right after these important words. Engines begin to roar now as they're setting down on the grid, getting set for the Portland 200. Mario Andretti to the left on the pole position, and Danny Sullivan to his right. And Larry, the excitement of this record crowd here in Portland is something else. They're anxious to see IndyCar racing.
Art, it has been a great week for the people here in Portland. Everywhere we have gone this week, everyone has been talking, asking questions about the IndyCar race. They have made it a focal point of this Rose Festival. They're very happy that the IndyCars have finally decided to come back to Portland. And I have a feeling that we may be here watching today the first annual of maybe several years return back to this area. This is your home originally. This must be exciting for you, too.
It really is, because all along, the racing fans here in Portland have supported SCCA and your Sports Car Club of America events here on this track. But to put something like $700,000 to $800,000 in renovation in order to accommodate the Indy cars and to see this great crowd and the fine weather here is really, truly exciting, Larry.
It was also a very early crowd. We left the hotel about 8:30 this morning expecting to breeze right into the track. The traffic had already backed up onto the interstate highways. The crowd was early. It's a large crowd. I think more people than they thought, and there's still a lot of people stuck out on the interstates, but a schedule is a schedule, and so the race goes on.
There you see the cars now. They will take 3 practice laps, and let's take a look at the starting grid now as those cars warm up on the track. On the pole, qualifying at 115.988 miles an hour, Mario Andretti in his Newman-Haas Budweiser Lola. He already won at Long Beach by 65 seconds. Next to Mario, another Lola T800. Danny Sullivan coming off a full season of Formula One in '83 to drive the Domino's Pizza Hot One. In row 2, the second place finisher at Indy. Also coming from the ranks of Formula One, Roberto Guerrero in the Master Mechanic March 84C. He's flanked by his Indy 500 co-rookie of the year mate, Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti is off to 3 of top 10 finishes in 4 races in his Electrolux Graco Special March 84 C10. Now in row 3, the Profimi Field March. Derek Daly of Dublin, Ireland. Daly, placing 7th at Long Beach, has moved to the IndyCar ranks after success in Formula 3. Next to Daly, 500 winner Rick Mears. Rick in the yellow Pennzoil Z7 March is looking for another win. In row 4, we've got Teo Fabi in his March Forsyth Skoal Bandit. Teo anxious to regain the touch that led him to a sensational rookie year in 1983. Bobby Rahal qualified 8th in today's field, and the veteran road racer has 2 7th-place finishes in his 7-Eleven Red Roof Inns March this year. Next, we've got Pete Halsmer with his brand new Levi March in row 5. A graduate of Super B's, Pete had a 2nd-place finish in Cleveland last year. Unser Jr. put his Coors Light Silver Bullet March in the 10th spot. Little Al giving notice on this Father's Day to Al Sr. He's hoping for his first IndyCar victory. In the 6th row now, as we see here, Jeff Brabham and Kevin Cogan. We've got row 7, Al Holbert and Al Unser Sr. Row 8, 4 veterans, Tom Sneva and Gordon Johncock. In row 9, Howdy Holmes, Chip Ganassi. And in row 10, Chris Neifel and Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve is followed by Danny Angayas and Dick Simon in row 11. Row 12, Jose Garcia and Scott Braden. In row 13, Ed Pym and Gary Bettenhausen, followed in row 14 by Stan Fox and Pepe Romero.
Gordon Johncock has already pulled into the pit area. All the cars did fire off. We are going to go, we understand, 3 pace and parade laps here, so Johncock perhaps will have enough time, a little longer pace and parading period. And Pepe Romero has had a problem on the racing surface already. Romero has had a collision with either another car or one of the barriers. He's one of the rookies who entered here this weekend. He did not qualify fast enough for the race, but he was given a position in the race in the promoter's option. So Pepe Romero from Miami, Florida, and the familiar Gordon Johncock, who raced in the IROC series yesterday, already in trouble.
The track description now for the Portland International Raceway. It's 1.9 miles around. We've got 9 turns on this road race circuit. Here's the main straightaways you see is a nice long one, which they can reach speeds to 175 miles an hour, passing that start-finish line in front of the paddock area, and then the cars shift down to 3rd. With a slight flick of the wrist, they go through a very dangerous chicane, Larry.
Well, the racetrack is also very flat, and at first it was thought that perhaps that would be a problem for the Indy cars, but the ground effects really compensated for that. Little narrow, but so far there's not been a problem with passing here during practice and qualifying.
Out of the chicane, we go to the S-turns then, and the danger point, of course, is the width of the track. Here's the short straight coming out of one of the S's, 700 feet long, but they really can't generate an awful lot of speed right there in 2nd to 3rd gear. Then to the back straightaway where they really burst loose, Larry.
They burst loose, and by the way, I believe I saw damage to Gary Bettenhausen's car. The rear wing of Gary Bettenhausen has been askew. Perhaps that is who Romero collided with, and that would make sense because Gary started on the outside of the 13th row and Romero on the outside of the 14th row, and now from the kart radios we get confirmation of that. It was Bettenhausen with whom Romero collided with.
In that back straightaway, there you see Bettenhausen coming down the line. In that back banana stretch, they can get to speeds up to 185 miles an hour. But, Larry, they're also worried about the bumpy condition, and how can you do this on a practice lap?
Well, let's pick up this Bettenhausen story for just a second. I think Gary is a very angry race driver. He also has a flat left rear tire, and he may have more problems there than it'll take just a couple of pace laps to take care of. So Gary Bettenhausen in the pits with a collision on the pace lap, something you don't see all that often in an IndyCar race. Art, you mentioned about the backstretch. The backstretch, it's not really bumpy, I guess, if you're running at normal speeds. We've had a couple of other races here this weekend. The backstretch has not proven to be a problem during those events, but for the Indy cars, they're probably well above 150, maybe approaching 160 miles an hour. It's something the drivers have to be aware of.
Gordy Johncock is back onto the track now after electrical problems, Larry.
Yeah, electrical problems. They're not exactly certain that they have them solved permanently. He is going to pull back into the tail of the field, and now he's coming back into the pit. So apparently Gordon finding something, or perhaps hearing something as he was out taking one more lap around the track. Gordon Johncock, who's gone to a lot of effort to race here this weekend, we'll cover that story a little more in depth a little later on, is having trouble even before the green flag.
That's right, because he's still hobbling on crutches trying to get around outside that car, and he was worried about his heel because of the braking on the heel. Down this backstretch now, it will be very important to get the tires warm and get those cars ready for the green flag. The backstretch, as we mentioned, 185 so miles an hour, and then they have to break down going into turns 8 and 9, and what we will call the sweeper. Now we'll see them coming out of it.
Yeah, we'll call that the sweeper, and it's very important because you have to hit the sweeper good. Matter of fact, you have to hit it great because you don't want to be late on getting the RPMs up coming down the long 2,700-foot front stretch. That's the best place for the Indy cars to pass, and if you do this turn right here, 8 and 9 as they call it, we'll call it the sweeper badly, it can really hurt you on the long front stretch.
Okay, let's watch the pace car. The pace car goes into the pits. This will be the green flag lap, it looks like. Danny Sullivan to the outside of the track, and Mario Andretti on the inside portion. There's the green flag, and our race, the Portland 200, is on. Let's see who makes it to the chicane first. There's not much room in that dangerous chicane. Let's take a check and make sure everybody gets through. It's Sullivan going through. So far, so good. Congratulations there, because the high speed coming off that short straightaway at the very front is very, very dangerous.
I'll tell you what, Art, all week long the drivers were telling us, and Al Unser Sr. is in trouble. Al Unser Sr. has come to a stop even before turn number 1.
Johncock is just coming out of the sweeper, and he's coming down to get his first lap started.
We started to say that all weekend long the drivers were telling us no way you can go through the chicane in any formation other than single file, and you know something? They did. They found a way to go 2 abreast through there at reduced speeds, but an excellent job of driving through a very tight part of this racetrack.
A terrific shot coming around the corner as they come down the backstretch now. Here is your leader, and it's Mario Andretti, followed by, that's right, Danny Sullivan.
So the 2 Lolas pick up where they left off at the end of qualifying, setting the pace for this field. That's Andretti. Remember, he has won already once this year. Sullivan is still looking for his first IndyCar victory of his career. There's Michael Andretti, Roberto Guerrero, Rick Mears going through, Derek Daly and the rest of the field working their way through that quick flick of the wrist. Left, right, and back to the right just a little bit through the chicane.
Everybody keeping fairly close with the exception of the cars that had early problems, Larry, and it's going to be interesting to see now because they've worked very, very hard in setting these cars up just right.
Well, Al Unser Sr. had that great record of reliability a year ago, and there is Al Unser Sr. right now, and Gary Lee has got a comment. Gary?
Well, you mentioned that Al Unser Sr. had a problem. We came down here to his pit. We said, what is the problem? In a very angered voice, Derek Walker simply said he blew the engine, turned around, and walked away. So a disgruntled crew down here in the pit area.
So the defending PPG champion is out of the race. The very first car out of the race and out of the sweep. There's Mario Andretti as he heads down the short front stretch.
I tell you, he is not shaking Sullivan at all. Danny Sullivan is more than stalking. He's keeping it on Andretti.
Danny Sullivan, of course, an experienced road racer. There you see Sullivan and Andretti as they head into the S's.
Give you a quick lap around the racetrack. That's turns 1, 2, and 3, at least as it says on the map. There are 3 right-handers in a row. Then you have to set up for this left-hander. That's turn number 4, the first time you go left on this course. It's turn number 5. There's a little dog leg, and then it leads onto the backstretch. The backstretch, artists called it a banana, and that's about the best description I can come up with. It's 2,400 feet long, and the Trans Am cars and the Super V cars seem to be able to pass back there, but it might be difficult for the Indy cars to pass. That cement wall on the right side of the car runs along the bank of a lagoon that's in the middle of this racetrack. Then to turns 8 and 9, the long sweeper. Now you want to shift down in the second gear. Coming out of the sweeper, you go up through third, fourth, and fifth. And if you're going to make a move, you want to try and set it up right now. Let's watch Sullivan. Has he got a move in mind on this lap? There he goes to the high side of Andretti.
From Louisville, Kentucky, Danny Sullivan trying to get by Mario Andretti, and he's going to try to hit that chicane first, but just can't quite do it as Mario Andretti holds him off. What a battle of the Lolas out front.
Pretty good racing, Art, and just a typical professional move by a couple of professional race drivers. Andretti just did not have enough room.
Sullivan, of course, coming off a 6th place in Milwaukee now. Mario Andretti making things look easy, but Danny Sullivan holding right with him.
Well, we'll go 200 miles today, and that's a little shorter than most IndyCar races. It's a nice hot day. Sunshine. The air temperature is nice and pleasant, but the sun is very warm, and you wonder, can these guys go flat out all day long, or can they pace themselves? And Sullivan is still keeping the heat on Andretti.
Okay, Andretti has a lot of confidence on this course, that's for sure, as we talked with him earlier, and he had a lot of confidence.
Looking at this race, you're obviously going to be starting near the front somewhere up there, probably from the pole. Is this a sprint race all the way?
200 miles, yes, it is. I mean, it's flat out, no question about it. And I think it's going to be very competitive because the nature of the course, it's got no particular difficulty anywhere, so I think everyone is very, very close. Because of that, I don't think you're going to see any runaways.
Very competitive is right, but 2 runaways right now, the Lolas, Larry.
Well, we'll also tell everybody that they're going to have to stop twice for fuel, we think. Andretti, you can see him really showing the pressure that Sullivan is putting on him. Mario has got a couple of rear-view mirrors full of Danny Sullivan.
Let's go to Gary Lee and an update.
Right now, the crew is trying to readjust the wing on the California Cooler March of Gary Bettenhausen. There's no measurements being taken. They're simply eyeballing the wing, trying to get it back in a straight position, trying to tighten down the bolt. Yesterday, we were kidding Gary about driving a green car, and he said it's not green, it's unripened yellow. But right now, we can tell the German is fuming in the cockpit, wanting to get back out into competition.
There's the leader, Mario Andretti, and Danny Sullivan battling it out. Let's take a look at how it happened now in the pass. Here's how Sullivan got ahead of Andretti. Sullivan telling his crew that he had Mario covered.
Out of turn number 7 into turn number 8. Now what Sullivan wants to try and do is outbrake the veteran Andretti. He gets to the inside going into turn number 8, and he finds just barely enough room. Andretti gave him about 1.5 inches. He needed 2 inches, but somehow he found a way to get through.
So Danny Sullivan, who comes off the Formula One circuit of last year, passes the champion on the Formula One circuit back in 1978. And Danny Sullivan has put the accelerator down as you see Mario Andretti number 3. Here's Danny Sullivan coming on the backstretch. Now to the S's.
Boy, what a great feeling for Sullivan, I'll tell you.
Racing action on its best at the Portland 500, and we'll be back with more in just a moment. Some great competitive action as we rejoin it now. In the back of the pack, it's Rick Mears, number 6, holding off Derek Daly. And that's really a battle going on as they come through the sweeper and head toward the front stretch.
6th, 7th, and 8th. The winner of this year's Indianapolis 500, the first yellow car, one of the veterans of the Formula One circuit, sandwiched in the middle. That's Derek Daly. And right behind is one of the guys who did most of the research and development work on the racetrack for the Radial tires, Al Unser Jr. Rick Mears, Daly, and Al Unser Jr. And there goes Al Unser Jr. going to the inside of Daly into the first set of turns, turns 1, turn number 2. And Al Unser Jr. has just moved up into the 6th, make that the 7th position. Al Unser Jr., he has more experience with these new Radial tires than everybody except 2 other drivers, Bobby Rahal and Mario Andretti, were also very instrumental in the development of the new Radial.
It'll be interesting to see if Rick Mears can hold him off. The Mears Pennzoil Z7 car having all kinds of trouble yesterday getting set up.
Yeah, he really did, Art. Rick, however, has been very strong in the road courses in the past, and we have seen some of the most intelligent races run in the past 3 years on ESPN by this gentleman, Rick Mears. And as far as Al Unser Jr. goes, looks like Stan Fox, who has slowed down the rest of the field. No, it's not. It's Roberto Guerrero. Guerrero was up in 4th position, so the young Colombian driver is in trouble.
Meanwhile, Danny Sullivan leads Mario Andretti by 6.52 seconds. As the leader is Danny Sullivan. We watch a very, very disappointed Roberto Guerrero come into the pits. Many thought this young man would win this race.
Well, Guerrero had qualified very well. He had qualified rather in third position. He was running in fourth. Now all of a sudden the car catches fire again. He did not even stop in the pit area. So Roberto having a very strange malady befalling him here in the early stages of the Portland 200.
Meanwhile, the leader, Danny Sullivan, is averaging about 111 miles an hour, a little bit better than that, as he takes over the lead with a substantial lead right now.
And we just got word from championship auto race teams that Mario Andretti has been black flagged. There was some question as to why smoke was coming from Mario Andretti's car. As we go back and look at Gordy Johncock, who is a lap down to the leaders. That's Bobby Rahal. Rahal now moves up to fourth position as Andretti has pulled into the pits at the request of the sanctioning body. There was smoke coming from Andretti's car. Nobody knew if it was a tire or an oversteer problem, perhaps something leaking from the back, but at any rate, he has been black flagged. He has had a consultation in the pit area, and now he is back out.
Andretti out of the pits on the Portland 200 now. Johncock is back on the track and looking pretty strong right now after a spark plug box problem. There's Andretti as he goes through the chicane. Let's go to the leader now, out of the backstretch. Danny Sullivan really ripping it off right now as he comes into the sweeper. He's taking the sweeper as well as we've seen all week.
And yesterday and Friday during practice and the qualifying, which of course was European style, you could just see Sullivan improve lap after lap after lap. I tell you what, the left front wing is tilting down just a little bit. I don't know if that was a particular angle we had from the camera right there, or maybe that's the way the wing was set up. I doubt it. But that left front wing looks to be just a little bit to a canter to the way they'd like to have it set up, but it certainly is not slowing Sullivan down at all.
Sullivan now with a 10.5 interval between him and the second place car. Very close getting by Fox. We got word that Roberto Guerrero did have spark box problems as well, and that's what slowed him down.
Sullivan continues to put distance between himself now and the rest of the field. The only guy who appeared to be able to mount a challenge to him was Mario Andretti. He has lost the majority of a lap to this man, the leader, Danny Sullivan. That means that Michael Andretti runs second, Bobby Rahal third, Rick Mears is fourth, Derek Daly fifth, Unser Jr. sixth, Pete Halsmer seventh, 8th, Kevin Colgan, 9th, Jeff Brabham, and 10th, Teo Fabi. And that is with the removal from the top 10 of both Mario Andretti and Roberto Guerrero. Let's watch for the interval now between first and second. There goes Sullivan through.
Danny Sullivan goes through the chicane.
Waiting now for Michael Andretti. The car will be yellow and blue trimmed. That's Brayton. Scott Brayton coming through. Scott has already lost a lap to the leaders. And there goes Michael Andretti, the young man who feels as though he has a good shot at becoming the champion of this series. 1984 season, his very first year. And you know something, Art? So do I. I think he's got an excellent chance of that happening, too.
The leader, Danny Sullivan, turning consistently low 103s on this almost 2-mile road course with 9 difficult turns in it. There you see Brayton, followed by Andretti. Michael Andretti is looking for a move there. Michael Andretti gets by Brayton.
Michael finds room on the outside going down the backstretch. Remember, that's the second longest portion on the racetrack. By the way, if you're an experienced follower of IndyCar racing, notice the helmet. It is silver with the big red. And Michael really dirt tracking there going into the sweeper. You could almost see him shake his head. He knew that he had committed a slight error there on that particular lap. Commenting about the helmet, it's just like his daddy's.
Gary Lee with Al Unser Sr. in the pits.
Al, we never like to talk to a race driver this early. In fact, you were out before the contest began.
That I was. Had to stop for early Miller.
Well, happy Father's Day, and now it's time to watch the son, right?
Yeah, it looks like he's doing pretty good. He's moving up a little bit, so I'm happy with him. I just hope that he can run all day.
Time to change clothes and go cheer for him.
Yep, that it is.
Al Unser out early.
Whether you're in the stands or watching on ESPN, it's not always easy to pick up on the little things that many times are very important in auto racing, and that's the reason ESPN, in cooperation with CART, brings you Track Fact.
On close examination, the front of this Indianapolis car appears to be painted 2 different shades of paint, but in actuality, this darker section is actually tape. It came from Vietnam. It was used for helicopters, helped repair them, and also it protected the rotor blades that went around. It is so strong on the front of an Indianapolis car that it not only protects the paint job, but also the actual bodywork itself. By the way, $90 for 30 feet. This little item here costs $3 for 1 foot.
Danny Sullivan continues to lead the Portland 200 on this Father's Day. We'll be back with more action right after this. Danny Sullivan continues to lead the Portland 200. That's Rick Mears right in front of him. Sullivan preparing for a move.
Well, that's Kevin Cogan right now trailing Rick Mears, and Kevin Cogan is the guy on the move. Kevin Cogan started this race in 12th position and has really been turning the heat up the last 4 or 5 laps. There is Mario Andretti is now out of the car, and it looks like another day is going to end early for this great champion, a former Indianapolis 500-mile race winner and a former Formula One champion.
Isn't it ironic on Father's Day, both fathers are out of the race right now?
Very true. Now a chance to sit back and watch the protege, as Gary Lee suggested earlier. But back to this Cogan story, he really has the Pontiac going. Right now, Rick Mears is running in 6th. That means that Kevin has moved from 12th in the grid to 7th. And it's not been just a result of attrition either. He has been filing his way through the top 10. Could this be one of those days that the stock block excels?
Kevin Cogan from Redondo Beach, California. His car built by Dan Gurney's All-American racers. They've got that American chassis, the only one in the race.
As we watch this battle for 6th position between Rick Mears and the Pennzoil Z7 Special, car number 6, fielded by Roger Penske in the Dan Gurney stock block Pontiac. We've got a report that Bobby Rahal is also beginning to close in a little bit on Michael Andretti. And another story up front in regards to Danny Sullivan. Sullivan is lapping this racetrack at better than 1.5 seconds faster than the second-running Michael Andretti.
Averaging about 109.197 miles an hour, Larry.
That is pretty impressive when you're going that much quicker than the second-place car. Tight traffic there through the S. Kevin Cogan really had to be careful. He lost a little bit of ground to Rick Mears, but he didn't have much choice. He popped up on that slower-moving Scott Brayton right in the middle of one of the most tricky parts of the racetrack.
Kevin Cogan, Duvernay Special. Cogan cracked the top 10 3 times last year. He was 5th at Indianapolis. He only had 3 days running that car and put it up over 200 miles an hour in practice.
Kevin Cogan, who started out rather race car driving back in karts back in 1972, has become one of the real stalwarts on the championship IndyCar trail.
Dublin, Ohio's Bobby Rahal on the pursuit, however.
Well, Rahal had started in 8th position in this race, and he's the kind of guy who often bides his time, and I'm not so sure that Bobby Rahal might be in a good position in this race. He caught a quick glimpse of the bright blue and yellow Craco car of Michael Andretti, and all of our spotters are telling us that Rahal is beginning to move in on Andretti. Right now, Michael is behind slower traffic. Ed Pimmon, another one of the stock blocks that qualify here this week, and Rahal can see him. There he is. You see the difference coming down the front stretch looking for the chicane. Watch Rahal try to race up behind Michael as Michael breaks going into the chicane.
Rahal really looking forward to getting back on the road race circuits. He's had a lot of success on them. The young man from Dublin, Ohio, has had 2 7th-place finishes so far this year, and he certainly would like to improve on that as he is in 3rd place right now here at the Portland 200.
Now, Bobby Rahal had a great year last year. As we look at Mario Andretti, who now is a spectator, he's there in the Paul Newman Carl Haas pit area, watching the proceedings here. The pit area is in the infield of this road course, and no matter what happens to you during the race, boy, you're stuck there until it's all over.
Andretti with really high hopes in the same car that he used to win Long Beach in by 65 seconds as he took from the pole and just took away with that race. But he's out of this one, and there's Bobby Rahal currently in 3rd.
Rahal had a great year in the 1983 season. He had really hoped that 1984 would kind of pick up for him where 83 ended, but so far it hasn't really gelled.
Bobby Rahal is an interesting guy to talk with anytime, and we ask him about the speeds that could be generated in this Portland International Speedway course.
Well, you know, it's a really good course because I think we're up around 185 or so on the back straight, and it's a little narrow. You know, in the corners, really you can't pass anybody, so it's going to make it a good close racing. But it's going to be a hard race.
Bobby Rahal coming out of the S turns right now is looking forward to that back straightaway, Larry.
Yeah, he is. It's a place where he'd like to be able to make up some ground. I think that his move in on Michael Andretti seems to have abated a bit. He's not moving in at the same rate that he was a couple of laps ago, if at all. I know that there was a little concern over the Radial tires, not the potential of their performance, but the team simply weren't accustomed to how they would respond. Now we go back a halfway around the racetrack. That's halfway ahead. Back into the S's. This is Danny Sullivan. A lot of the drivers were going to work these first 15 or 20 green flag laps, paying a lot of attention to the tires just to see how they would respond. They're very happy with the new Radial tires. They seem to be more consistent. The performance level peaks a little sooner than the old bias, and it seems to hold there. But now with anything that's new, you always want to wait and see what happens. As you look at Chip Ganassi, who, by the way, is running solidly in the first 15, you want to see what happens during actual race conditions, and there is our leader again. And I'll tell you, he's doing some racing out here today. Danny Sullivan, is he en route to his first victory ever in an Indycar?
This is his 7th start as he pursues Chip Ganassi and Brayton down that straightaway. Will he have room to get around? 109.255 miles an hour for Danny Sullivan. Let's take a look at the course now, Danny Sullivan, as he goes through the chicane, headed toward the short chute and then into the S turns. Our fine shot from the Goodyear Airship Columbia, captained by Captain Creighton from Hermosa Beach, California. He's trying to get by, Larry.
Yeah, Danny Sullivan is now right in the center of your frame. You can see the red nose and the blue tail working on slower traffic as he enters the S turns. He goes to the first left-hander on this course, then almost a hard right turn to a dog leg leading onto the backstretch. Now watch Sullivan, second car there. He'll swing to the outside and go around slower traffic. I'm guessing that Stan Fox from this distance. It's a little difficult to tell, but if it's a white car, it's probably Stanley, the midget racer. Down the backstretch, Sullivan now swings to the right, breaks down shifts to go into turn number 8, which is the large sweeper. You can see him just touch the yellow curving. Turn number 9 coming out of the final turn of the course and down onto the long front stretch where he really hopes to pick up a lot of speed.
Okay, with
Mario Andretti, emotions have a way of changing in championship car racing. Before the race, you were very loose, very confident. Then in the pit area very early, what happened?
Well, it started overheating immediately for just an engine we had to put in last night, and I don't know what happened really. It started overheating, then of course the mixture got richer and richer. The engine wouldn't pick up after a corner, and it just wouldn't go. Then finally I had to bring it in because it's Sullivan gone.
This Father's Day has not been very good to the fathers in the race because Al Sr.'s out and now you're out.
What can I say?
We understand the leader is now off the race course.
That's exactly right, Gary. Sullivan has pulled off the course, and it was in that dangerous area, I believe, Larry, right before the chicane.
Art, it happened very suddenly. I don't believe it was a crash, just as we were at the end of that last shot from the Goodyear blimp, and you can see Danny acknowledging the cheers of the crowd. He put on a gallant effort, but his race day was over. It was mechanical. It was not a crash. I just caught a quick glimpse of that car slowing as he got to the chicane. Instead of making the right turn, he just coasted to a stop and coasted through the chicane, and that now means that Michael Andretti, with a closing Bobby Rahal, is our leader.
Al Hobart is off the track as well as Michael Andretti comes down to the start-finish line, putting the pedal down as he's taken over the lead here in the Portland 200. Michael Andretti, what a performance.
Art, I'll tell you, with the retirement of the two Lolas, this could be some humdinger of a race. This thing is now wide open. It is now Michael Andretti, followed by Bobby Rahal, Al Unser Jr., and Derek Daly. But there are a lot of people who have the potential to be competitive, and everybody's got to stop twice.
Here's the leader right now, behind Bettenhausen. And Rahal is right behind Michael Andretti, and Rahal wanted to sneak through, but didn't take a chance, did he?
Well, you know, had this been later in the race, I'm sure Bobby would have tried to do it, sort of thread the needle there. But this early in the race, you want to sit back and find out exactly how Michael is performing. And it looks to me like Rahal's got the stuff to get around Michael, so he doesn't really need to take any chances at this point in the contest.
There's a lot of hard crew work that went behind Rahal's performance today. I mean, all the crews work hard, there's no question, but Rahal had some early problems.
You betcha, and it's been a tough year for his car owner, Jim Truman, and he'd really like to win here at Portland for his car owner.
So we'll leave the terrific racing action here at the Portland 200, but we'll be back with more right after these messages.
We are back live in Portland. We may see a difference in pit strategy. Right now, your leader is Michael Andretti. He should come in about lap 33. However, Jim Truman, the owner of Bobby Rahal's car, who's now running second, says he'll likely bring his guy in about lap 36 or 37. So if Andretti pits early, he'd give the lead to Bobby Rahal. Art?
Thank you, Gary. Scott Brayton is out of the race with transmission trouble, but let's take a look now at the top 5 here at the Portland 500. Michael Andretti, followed closely by Bobby Rahal and Unser Jr. Derek Daly having a fine race, and Rick Mears in the number 5 spot. That's 25 laps of our 104 completed.
Yeah, and Michael Andretti and Rahal have a fairly comfortable margin between themselves and the third running Unser Jr., who likewise is comfortable running ahead of Derek Daly. Right now, Andretti in heavy traffic. This could be the moment that Rahal's been waiting for. There's Bobby in the white car running behind the yellow and blue Andretti as they approach Jose Garza and Gordy Johncock, of course, STP orange, Petty Johncock blue. Gordy lost a lap early when he had to stop even before the race took off. And there is Andretti trying to pick his way through slower traffic. It's Garza again and Johncock.
It's also the traffic giving a chance for Al Jr. to catch up along with his racing ability because he's closing in as well.
Boy, and Michael really took a big chance there going into the sweeper. You saw him get on the binders hard, but he was able to slide underneath Josele, and Rahal has gotten around. Bobby Rahal has taken the lead.
Bobby Rahal in the lead right behind Gordon Johncock.
Well, the lead change took place in the big sweeper. Now watch coming down out of the long backstretch, just coming to the left-hand side of your screen. Keep your eye on Bobby Rahal. There you see Michael on the brakes. He just barely touches Jose Garza. He's done a good job saving the car at this point, but he's lost a lot of RPMs, and coming out of the sweeper under the front stretch, Bobby gets by.
Official notification, Danny Sullivan out with a gearbox problem. Michael Andretti.
Also on that time, for who the S is, I saw Michael wave. I think he was waving at Bobby Rahal. A little bit of communication going on there. It might have been an apology, or might have been saying, hey, don't worry, I'm not done yet. You never know, but it didn't look to me like there were too many heated tempers there or anything. It was just some communication.
Michael Andretti, terrifically mature for his age, Larry.
Yeah, he really is, and I kind of like the kind of confidence that he has. It's been a confident attitude. It's been one of stability, but I can't really say that it has been cocky. And he's having a great year, and I think it's going to continue.
Well, he's had an outstanding start on this season. 3 top 10 finishes. 3rd at Milwaukee, 5th at Indy. We talked with him earlier.
Michael, we're to the point of the season where you're coming in with a little bit of confidence, the road courses, right?
Yeah, you know, I made it through the ovals, which that was mainly the place where I didn't have the experience, and now I feel going into the road courses, I think I have a little more confidence than I did going into the ovals, but you know, who knows, anything can happen.
Michael Andretti, anything can happen. Well, he was an SCCA Super V title in '82. He came up through the ranks, paid his dues to join his father on this circuit.
And it was announced this morning that he will debut next week in Detroit in a Trans Am. So he'll have an opportunity in another type of race car. It'll be the famous Diatley team, the Diatley Corvettes, which have dominated Trans Am racing for the past couple of seasons. So that'll be a great ride in a new venue for Michael Andretti. By the way, Andretti had not led one lap until today. He's led a few today, but right now, that guy's got the edge.
Bobby Rahal, he's your leader in the Portland 200 right now. And he's looking strong.
Well, the course has some similarities to what I guess would be Bobby Rahal's home course in Mid-Ohio, back in Ohio, near Mansfield, Ohio. The course, of course, is owned by his team owner, Jim Truman. This course that we mentioned at the top of the show is flat, and that was something that the drivers had to contend with when they first arrived here. But the new ground effects cars really compensate nicely for the flatness of this course. Very well manicured. When we arrived here on Thursday before the Indycars were turned loose, gosh, it looked like an artist drawing out there. The pavement was jet black, and the curbs were painted bright yellow. The racetrack was marked off with nice, bright white lines. It really looked nice. You notice the curbs now. You can see where the apex is on the corners because the Indycars, they hit right on it and scrubbing off all the paint.
It's going to be interesting as Bobby Rahal now coasting toward the pits. Michael Andretti goes right over the start-finish line, taking over the first-place position.
Well, it's possible that it's a fuel situation. He may have been pushing it to the limit in terms of the fuel, but he's losing valuable ground. If it is fuel, what a great break for Rahal to have this happen right at the entrance to the pit area.
Rahal slowly moving past Gordon Johncock in the pit area. It certainly looks like it might be the fuel running low as Rahal into the pits now, but our new leader is Michael Andretti. Let's check out the pit action.
Well, they checked the tires on all four sides. They're going to change the left front. Fuel going in. No frantic going on there, so we are assuming that it must simply be a fuel stop, and Gary Lee is ready to go in Michael Andretti's pit, the current leader.
Well, obviously, for Bobby Rahal, he's not getting the mileage they had anticipated. They shoot for 1.8 miles per gallon. That would compute to about 1 lap per gallon of fuel, which means they should go about 36 or 37 laps before their first stop. Obviously, they're not getting that fuel consumption in car 7.
But the great break is he did run out of gas right near his pit area. Michael Andretti takes a lap around. He just went over the start-finish line, as you see there. Rahal trying to get out of his pit.
It'll be a little tougher than normal to restart. They get it fired back up, and Bobby returns to the fray. But the sad part about this for Rahal is he only went 30 laps, Art, which means he's got to stop 2 more times. Theoretically, based on the statistics, he'll have to stop again at lap 60 and a 3rd time on lap 90, and everybody else is planning on only stopping twice. So, like at Mid-Ohio last year when Rahal was dominant, they had a fuel pickup problem in that race. Don't know if it's a pickup or a consumption problem today, but it looks like fuel is going to be the nemesis today here at Portland for Bobby Rahal.
There you see the 7-Eleven car, Bobby Rahal, as he tries to pick up on the leaders. Michael Andretti, though, has done a great job. Through the backstretch. Rahal gunning it. He told us on that interview prior that he can make up to 185 miles an hour on that bumpy backstretch that kind of bananas toward the sweep, as we see him going to the sweep right now. We'll return to Portland International Raceway with more action as you see Michael Andretti and Unser Jr. 1 and 2.
Andretti changing 3 tires, topping off the fuel, and he is underway.
Michael Andretti with some catching up to do as he had to pit to change those tires and to take on fuel. And it's Al Unser Jr., currently the leader in the Portland 200.
Well, this could be a very intriguing race as we get down to the end. A couple of seconds ago, the top 5 drivers, as they were ranked here in the Portland race, had all never experienced victory in an Indianapolis car, and now Al Unser Jr. is ducked into the pits as we talk. Routine pit stops. We're about 1/3 of the way through the race. There is the youngster from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Great experience in all types of equipment, sprint cars, Super Bs, even a short stint in ASA late models. He's been successful wherever he has raced. He's always been a winner, and I guarantee you it's only a matter of time before he's a winner in this league. It'll be interesting to see now when Al Unser Jr. comes out, where he comes out relative to Michael Andretti. Michael is coming down the front stretch right now. Al Andretti going a little slowly. Michael accelerating hard down the front stretch. You can't see him right now. Let's see where Al comes out if Michael has already gone by.
Al Unser Jr. back on the track. There's Michael Andretti as you see him there. We pick him up as he goes toward the S-turns. Michael Andretti reestablishing the lead on the pit stop of Al Unser Jr.
Well, Derek Daly and Rick Mears are the other 2 guys who are in the top 5. Neither one of them has stopped yet. And here's an interesting situation now. Michael went 33 laps. That means theoretically he's 1 lap short, and he needs 2 more pit stops to finish this race. Al Unser Jr. appears to be in good shape, and certainly Derek Daly, Kevin Cogan, and Rick Mears are in excellent shape.
So those that still have not pitted are in the lead, and you see Michael Andretti currently in 3rd right now, who is already pitted. Let's go to Gary now with Jim Truman. Gary?
Jim, it would appear that you're not getting the fuel mileage you really anticipated.
Well, something went wrong. We're checking now to see how much went in on the chance that we're not picking it all up. But
We expected to do at least 33 laps, and he sputtered on the 30th lap. So we've just now started to calculate what happened, and it really looks like the mileage isn't anywhere near what it should have been.
So it could be a pickup problem similar to the one you had at Mid-Ohio last season.
Not quite that severe, but it isn't any good.
Obviously, it may make for a long day for Bobby Rahal.
Not severe yet, because he still has plenty of time to get back in the race, and it's going to be interesting strategy now from his pit crew as to how to adjust for that abnormality, or what they think is an abnormality.
Well, the official reasons out for the two Lolas as we look at Teo Fabi coming in. Teo has not been a threat for the lead here, but it looks like his mileage is certainly going to be satisfactory. The two Lolas out. The number 30 Lola of Danny Sullivan, a rear end or gear shifting problem. And for Mario Andretti, officially listed as he's out of oil, meaning it was an engine problem for Mario.
Bobby's crew doing a magnificent job as they had an engine fire on Thursday stemming from an oil leak. So this is actually his backup car today that he's put in position.
Well, Teo really hasn't had that great flash of brilliance that we saw in 1983. It just hasn't picked up for him where it was a year ago. Teo performing here in front of a record crowd here at the Portland International Raceway. 40 or 50,000 people. We have not had the official count yet.
Here's the official out of race. Al Unser Sr., the firstman, Pepe Romero, Mario Andretti, Scott Brayton, then Danny Sullivan. He was leading at the time. Pete Halsmer, number 11, then Stan Fox, number 24. Those are those racers out of action here at the Portland 200 before a record crowd. They're seeing a great race.
A real disappointment for Pete Halsmer. That's a brand new 1984 March, just out of the box for this weekend. Peter was consistently in the top 10 in terms of times, qualifying and practice during the week. They had high hopes and a great deal of optimism, but they've gone out with a gearbox problem on that brand new 84 March. By the way, that chassis number was 44, so that gives you an idea as to how successful the March factory has been in selling cars.
Michael Andretti trying to pass now. Chip Ganassi, the red car, right out in front of him, but doesn't quite have enough. Michael Andretti, though, and then that's Al Unser Jr. right behind him as they go through the chicane. Quick flick of the wrist, as we mentioned, but very dangerous. There's not much room to pass. As you see there, Michael backing off of passing Chip Ganassi.
Boy, isn't this something? 22-year-old Michael Andretti, 22-year-old Al Unser Jr., the sons of two former Indianapolis 500-mile race winners, two former national champions. The second generation has really arrived, and Al Unser Jr. right now seems to have the edge on Michael Andretti, the son of Mario Andretti. He's about a half of a second faster than Michael, and now we'll see how this young duo, a couple of 22-year-olds, handle this as they get into traffic. Where were you 22 years ago, by the way?
22 years ago, well,
don't tell me it was grade school. I don't.
Oh, what a magnificent performance by these youngsters, though, with these new faces coming into the kart scene and being so well prepared.
And they really are, and I tell you, I would venture to guess there would be very few people who would be disappointed and not excited to have one of these two young Chargers win here at Portland for their first victory ever behind the wheel of an IndyCar. Both of them very successful in the Super Bs, former champions in that division.
Now, wouldn't that be amazingly ironic, the two sons. There's Guerrero. He's having all kinds of problems. You see the smoke coming from his car. So far, the worker, though, is not called for help.
Well, Roberto has had a great year. He's number 3 in the money list for 1984. I think there's a fire in the back of that car. A little bit of panic now setting in as Guerrero gets out of the car. Some crewmen come to help out, some safety people, as there's definitely a fire in the back of the Cotter Bignati machine.
There was the pit worker out there, but had no facility to battle a blaze as they're down at the end of pit row.
Well, Roberto had a great chance at victory here today. He was running in the top 4 early in the race, and as attrition began to set in, and particularly on the Lolas, Guerrero at one point was looking like he might be the hot setup for the race here at Portland.
And he really wanted to. He looks okay, and but it's a situation where he's got to be very, very disappointed. Ever since he hot-wired his father's go-kart at 9 years old, he's wanted to be a champion. There's no question about it.
Well, Al Unser Jr.
leader now.
There you see him.
Al Unser Jr. getting around, and he is our new leader here at the Portland 200. They're going into the S's and through the S's. Al Unser Jr. looking very cool. Michael Andretti right behind him there. The second and third cars in that row.
Well, traffic has really been a factor and has kept this a relatively tight race. Danny Sullivan was the only guy who really was able to dominate.
ESPN, in cooperation with the kart, likes to bring you closer to the drivers and their cars, and that's why we like to go down and ask about unusual things and things you might overlook. Here's Track Facts.
We've examined the large ducts in the front of an Indianapolis car before. These ducts lead into the brakes and keep them cool. Well, if you attend an Indianapolis car race and see a tape is covering about half the ducts, keeping a lot of that cooler air out, what you will know and can tell your friends is that, hey, that car's got brand new brakes on them. You keep the brakes as hot as possible the first couple of laps when they're new, so they bed in properly.
Some great racing by some youngsters here at the Portland 200.
This is a stress test. Rick Mears, 1984 Indy 500 winner, and the Pennzoil Penske Indycar had to run at speeds of over 200 miles per hour, with the engine hitting over 10,000 RPM. This is a stress test, and this is no picnic for a motor oil. This is where Rick Mears, Indycar champ, tests Pennzoil's quality and high technology to the limit. That's why you want Pennzoil protection in your car. Pennzoil, high technology and quality. Ask for it.
Oh, my arm.
From high above Portland International Raceway, our shot from Captain Creighton from Hermosa Beach in the Goodyear Airship Columbia. Seeing a fantastic race as the youngsters up front running very, very hard. We've also got a lot of veterans playing it cool in the back of the pack. There's Tom Seaver. You see him there. He is 9th, and he is the last car on the lead lap, and that is right behind him, Al Unser Jr.
Al's getting ready to put a lap on Tom. By the way, the other people in the top 10. In third place is Derek Daly. Fourth place is Jeff Brabham, as again we're watching Al Unser Jr. getting ready to put a lap on the 9th place car of Tom Sneva. The other people on the lead lap, Mears, Kevin Colgan, Teo Bobby Rahal hanging on by the hair of his chinny chin chin.
We'll see how Al Unser Jr. decides to try to get back as they go to the backstretch now, and Sneva's got a lot of push, a lot of power, but there Al Unser Jr. makes it look easy on the backstretch.
Now, Al Unser Jr., most of his experience in the last 4 or 5 years came on the road courses, although, as we mentioned earlier, he's driven just about everything with success. But he looks very strong and very confident, as he has since he entered this league late in 1982.
Tom Sneva with 11 wins in kart racing, but no wins on the road course.
You know, we've seen Rick Mears look very strong in many races the past 2 or 3 years. Roger Penske's got to be wondering what's going on right now.
Let's go down to Gary.
Roger Penske, your driver, Rick Mears, didn't qualify with many laps of practice, but right now he's running well, and with the attrition rate, he keeps moving up. Is that part of the strategy?
Well, as you know, we're running to run the whole race. We knew this was going to be a tough race, hard to pass. The tires looked real good, these new radials, but we wanted to be sure under a long run how they'd end up for us. So we're running kind of conservative. We're trying to make it in 2 stops, which maybe will help us at the end. Right now, we're very happy with the way he's running.
Is it not difficult for Rick to hold back just a bit, because we've seen him so often want to lead the parade?
Well, I'll tell you, Rick's a pretty smart driver, and he knows today we need to finish because we're working on that championship.
So right now we see a smile halfway through the race from Roger Penske.
Right there is Tom Sneva slipping through the sweep as he goes down right in front of the stands. You know, this is a jet-setting course for some of these drivers, and several of them had another obligation this weekend, and it made it very difficult.
It's 3:45 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 6:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Friday of race weekend, and you're about to tag along on a true jet-set fantasy. Our tour guide is Michael Knight, PR Director for Budweiser, and like General Patton, he directs from the hood of a vehicle to a waiting helicopter. What do you do when you have a chance to drive twice in one weekend but 2,000 miles apart? Frantic drives through crowds, leashed rotary wings, and Learjets.
Any other place for this stuff?
Tom Sneva, Danny Angaias, Gordy Johncock, and Johnny Rutherford. They will be the subjects of our tour this day.
Did you guys hear about me coming along? Well, we did. You don't like it too much,
You can't quite believe it, but we did.
That was our cameraman, John Bodecker, who will tag along with us. Friday's IndyCar practices just ended in Portland, and the 4 drivers have an assignment tomorrow at the Michigan International Speedway near Jackson, Michigan. They've been invited to drive in the International Race of Champions. course, the luggage must come along. Gordy Johncock still hobbling on crutches from his IndyCar crash. And Johnny Rutherford and Danny Angayas will discover that they even serve food on these small charter flights. You know, you wonder, why would anyone leave perfectly beautiful Portland, jumping on a helicopter, then to a waiting, idling Learjet?
Yeah. Getting paid. Money.
This is leg 2 of the trip, liftoff from the Portland International Airport. It's almost night, by the way, back on the East Coast. A 4-hour transcontinental flight gives busy people a chance to stop and smell the roses. Mount Good, in this particular case. A little bit of last-minute instructions from Mike Knight, laying out the weekend schedule. Tom Sneva, you know, race drivers are a volatile lot, and speaking of volatile, there's Mount St. Helens. Remember that? We're very close, by the way, to being right over Tom Sneva's old hometown. Flying west to east, day becomes night twice as fast, and a full moon lights the way. Touchdown, midnight, near Jackson, Michigan, at the Jackson Airport. For Tom Sneva and the 3 other drivers, it will be a personal escort now to Roger Penske's suite on the MIS grounds, and plenty of time for about 7 or 8 hours of sleep. Gordy Johncock, by the way, silhouetted by the Jackson Airport lights, is only about 35 miles from home. But he's still 3 days and 2 more flights back and forth across the country before he sees his own family room.
Little draggy. Draggy, that's all? Well, it's, you know, you get kind of built up for these races. Probably when it's over, we'll be ready to let her head back. You ready to go back to? Yeah, I'll jump on the jet and head back to Portland.
Oh, just ready to go. Got a smile on her face. It should be fun.
You tired at all?
No, not yet. Maybe later.
It's time to buckle up inside the specially prepared Budweiser Camaros. Clothes are a big part of the coordination. The helmets and driver suits were here, waiting in Michigan. It's 8 a.m. on the West Coast, but race time here in the Irish Hills. As the IROC Camaros roll off, see the number 8 car coming up. It'll be pink. Neil Bonnet. He will best the IndyCar drivers in this race of champions. After 100 miles in the high banks, the Nomads will whisk away in another whirlybird as the Grand National stars already take back the racetrack and begin to practice. And then back on to the Penske Corporate. Johnny Rutherford is the lucky one in this group. His wife, Betty, also gets to come along. 2,000 miles go by in about 4 hours in the air in a small Learjet, and now we're touchdown back in Portland, Oregon. Gordy Johncock knows that his day is a long ways from being over. The drivers will head back toward the Portland International Raceway, hoping to get back on the racetrack one more time.
Portland Speedway. Here's our Can-Am races going on. Is it? So I guess we're all right.
Well, they've made it. We think they've not quite touched down yet. The helicopter sends over the Portland International Raceway, the Trans Am stars in the background, and now a rush back to the garage and pit paddock area. Another change of clothes, maybe a quick splash of water on your face. And is there enough time to go out for that final practice session? Yes. It's about 3 p.m. here on the West Coast, 6 p.m. back on the East Coast, from whence the drivers just came. And after an all-nighter, 4,000 miles, still this day is not over. 45 more minutes inside the IndyCar, and then maybe a rest.
Larry, I feel like I went through that time zone change myself.
I tell you, time zones become a moot point for racing drivers. You really have to operate on your own schedule and just totally operate without regard to making sure you get enough sleep, whether it's daylight or dark outside.
Number 99, Michael Andretti, is not in the top 5 anymore. He had an unscheduled pit stop. It looked like he was having tire problems, Larry.
Well, he made 2 stops over the period of 3 laps. We were unable to really get zeroed in on it. Another driver who was running well in the top 10, the Pontiac stock block of Kevin Kogan, also out of this event.
We'll update the situation from the Portland 200 when we get back. Right now, let's take a look at the top 5 as we break away for some very, very important messages. Al Unser Jr., the leader. International Raceway and ESPN bringing you the live action. We got a great race underway, but quite a bit of attrition. And right there, we have Kevin Cogan, who is out of the race. The speed is now averaging 105.671 miles an hour, but there are cars dropping off there.
Yeah, Kevin was having a great race. We remember back in Cleveland a couple of years ago how strong he ran, and there's Howdy Holmes down in the same area with Kevin, and Howdy peering into the cockpit. We were told he had a problem with the gear shift lever or something else in the transmission, the linkage. And Howdy Holmes, who was not really competitive today in terms of victory, he was running about 13th or 14th on the course, second fast at Indianapolis, but his day is over.
Al Hobart, outside of turn 2, is dead in the grass.
Well, there's a guy that a lot of people thought might be a real strong candidate for victory this week here. Lots of road racing experience. That team had high hopes for this weekend in Portland. And Art, I'll tell you, attrition has suddenly jumped up and become a major factor. You know what happens when you see all these cars dropping out? All the crews start second guessing. Boy, this day, this course must be more demanding than what we thought. So then you start changing your mind as opposed to your original pre-race strategy.
Well, over to his last race here on this track. Won it, is out of action right now. Let's go down to Gary.
As we had alluded to at the start of the race, there has been a problem with heat retention in the left rear. One of the problems with Michael Andretti has been a blistered left rear tire. We tried to get a shot to show you what a blistered tire looks like. The Goodyear man, the engineer, said, no, we don't want that on television. They put the tire in the back of a pickup truck and then put a blanket over it so we could not show you. But once again, the left rear, because of the intense heat being generated by this new surface out here, caused the tire to blister, but Goodyear did not want us to show you. Art?
Michael Andretti.
Another one of the factors, I think, that has had an influence on the tire situation, there were a couple of surprises that popped up here this week. Number one,
he just plain got nasty, and the engineer stood right in front of the camera.
Brand new pavement, and the pavement was new here this week, and I think that was a big surprise. Also, Art, we've had a much warmer week, no rain, which was a big surprise. There were a couple of unexpected factors that popped up this week at the wrong time for a brand new tire.
In the S's, look at the wing on Mears' car. Rick Mears having a draft he didn't want.
Well, I'll tell you, that is a situation that is just impossible to be competitive with. Rick was on the lead lap. He was 31 seconds behind the leader, and what an unusual sight to see that happening to a Penske car. You can see that Rick has a real hard time keeping that car going straight. He can see what's happening with the Mears. He'll have to stop. I would guess this time around it's going to be much earlier than what he had hoped to stop, but it will be pretty difficult, really, to race and remain competitive at all.
As Al Unser Jr. stays very powerful, and that could be coming off that backstretch and knock something loose. I know they had a fiberglass job several times underneath that car.
Yeah, it's possible, but bear in mind, it's the same set of circumstances for every team out there.
Mears heading for the pits now to try to get that wing problem corrected.
What he'll hope to do is try and get it corrected and still stay on the lead lap, and that's going to probably be just about impossible because he was about 30 seconds from being lapped by Al Unser Jr. What a test for the team to replace the wing or remove it. They may just go ahead and remove the wing and go for the best.
To Gary Lee.
Indeed, they do have a replacement wing here. Rick has come in. He has hit the kill switch. The engine is now off. They'll go ahead and refuel the car. No change of rubber. And right now, the crew is working at the back of the car, taking off the damaged wing. The spare wing is also in position, ready to go on. So a very unusual pit stop for Rick Mears. And obviously, this will wipe that grin off Roger Penske's face.
Al Unser Jr. has already gone past the start-finish line through the chicane. He's in the S's right now. So he's put Mears one lap down.
Also sad to report for our fans of Ed Pym, the race driver who's a graduate of Super V Racing. He is reported slowing on the course, and he too may be in trouble.
A race within a race, that's for sure.
Now the hard line to go to Rick, which is about...
if we've got Bobby Rahal coming up against Dale Bobby.
There you see Rahal. Rahal has lost some ground to Dale Bobby. Bobby Rahal now with Rick Mears moving out of the top 5, moves into, let's see, I believe he is in 5th position, make that 4th position, and Teo Bobby is right behind him. Bobby, who was running a conservative pace in the first 20-25 laps of this race before the first series of pit stops, suddenly finds himself back into the picture. Al Unser Jr. continues to lead. Ireland's Derek Daly finds himself 19 seconds behind Al Unser Jr. in second. Jeff Brabham third. Then these two drivers right here, Bobby Rahal fourth, and Teo Fabi fifth. They are about 2/3 of a lap behind the leader, Al Unser Jr.
No matter what you planned or what you think right now, the way the attrition has taken effect, you really can't count on anyone.
All right, you really got to step back and think, wow, this track is more demanding than what we anticipated. A lot of other folks are dropping out. How do we plan the rest of this race? And I'll tell you, if I was Huey Absalon and Al Unser Jr.'s pit, I'd be doing a lot of head scratching, figuring what can we do to more or less hold on to the lead, but not necessarily punish this race car. Al Unser Jr., again, as we're watching the battle for fourth between Rahal and Teo Fabi, Al Unser Jr. has led many, many races, only to have the car drop out from underneath him.
Jose Legarza is the third car right in front of Rahal. As Rahal and Fabi battle it out, boy, Fabi went well to win in this race. He had an 18th in Milwaukee after that sensational 83, where he had 6 poles and 4 wins in 13 races. Teo Fabi, second place in the point standings last year. And I'd like to get things on track right here.
Yeah, he sure would. It's been a little bit of a distressing year for the Forsythe team. I felt as though they were certainly going to be one of the top contenders for the championship here in '84, but it hasn't unfolded that way at all. Bobby Rahal, similar circumstances. The team expected more in '84. Bobby is an interesting man. He's 31 years of age. He came to IndyCar racing a couple years ago with a degree from Denison College in Granville, Ohio. Ironically enough, he went to high school in Glen Ellen, Illinois. He was going to high school there about the same time that Rich Vogler, one of the midget sprint car stars of the United States Auto Club, also living with his family there in Glen Ellen.
Rahal getting by Garza. And we suspect right there it's only a matter of time when they get through those S's.
We are down
to Fabi will get them close.
We are down to 14 cars left on the course. 28 started, a much higher rate of attrition than we ever expected. 55 laps are complete, so we are more than halfway through the race.
And consistently.
There's Ed Pym, the 28-year-old driver who entered this race in one of the stock blocks, talking about graduates. There's another one of the college graduates who's made his way into IndyCar racing. Ed is a graduate of Cornell University. This guy is a graduate of the American School of Auto Racing. He probably has more experience than anybody in the history of the whole world for a 22-year-old behind the wheel of a speeding vehicle.
Al Unser Jr. leading the Portland 200. He's consistently turning 104s around this almost 2-mile track, whereas Daly and Brabham are going at about 105.
Also, to give you an idea of how that compares to the qualifying runs, they're losing about 3 to 4 seconds now rather from what they qualified.
Is that Ganassi?
Beginning to look like Chip Ganassi is in trouble in the S's, and the car is apparently out of power.
Chip Ganassi in the grass near the S's.
Ganassi was running 1 lap down to the leader, but with all the people who had dropped out, Ganassi was running in 9th position on the course. And finally, Rick Mears gets back out with a brand new rear wing, but it cost him several laps. I think he was in the pits for 3 or 4 laps while the crew replaced that wing. And as we watch Rick Mears, more problems for Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti is back into the pits for yet another time.
He's having his tire problems, that's for sure. There's Michael Andretti now as they go for that left side.
Well, I'm sure they topped off the fuel every time that he came in, so this could not be a necessary or a routine fuel stop. They must be concerned about something else in the race car. It was reported that it may have been a problem with the tire before. They do replace tires on 3 sides of the race car and to get ready to shove him back out into the speedway.
Al Unser Jr. has not had any problems, though, as he consistently stays out on top of this Portland 200.
Well, we've commented that today is the debut of the brand new Radial tires. And there you see a cutaway of the old bias ply tires. It's very similar, matter of fact, exactly the same as the bias tires that you perhaps have on your car in the garage. The plies are running in opposition to each other, making a cross section on the tire. With the Radials, you have a belt that runs 360 degrees around the outside of the tire. It makes the tire a little more sturdy. It makes it much more predictable and dependable. The drivers were telling us that the new Radials, they could tell a little more how they were going to respond. They were very comfortable with them. And the big thing about the new Radial tires is that they are very true to form out of the mold. They don't grow or they don't shrink. And it's almost all but eliminated stagger or the difference in the tire size of the same tires that come out of the same molds.
There's a great shot of our leader here at the Portland 200. Al Unser Jr. continues to lead our 200, and we'll be back with more live action from Portland International Raceway. And Al Unser goes down the main stretch.
Ask the independent investors you know the name of the largest discount stockbroker in America, and they'll tell you Charles Schwab and Company. Over 50 offices and more customers than any other discount broker. Ask the independent investors why Charles Schwab and Company is the largest, and they'll tell you up to 76% discount on commissions when you buy or sell securities. Place your orders from anywhere in the country 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Computer technology that speeds order entry and executions. Accounts protected up to $2.5 million. Low interest rates when you borrow on your marginable securities, and no salesperson will call ever. Charles Schwab, the largest for very good reason. Ask the independent investors and they'll tell you. Go with America's #1 discount stockbroker, Charles Schwab.
For your free information kit and discount rate schedule.
Track, and the track helpers there saying they need assistance to help to push him back, Larry.
Now the banking executive from Mexico, the country to the south of the United States, for the second event in a row, Jose Lee had a problem in qualifying. He failed to qualify at Milwaukee, but he did get into the field here, the 23rd fastest out of 24, and he was able to stay out on the track while all these other cars were dropping out around him. And ironically enough, Jose Lee had moved up to 10th position, despite the fact that he is 3 laps off the leader's pace, the leader being Al Unser Jr., but he spun off just moments ago, and they're having a hard time getting it to fire back up.
Well, he wants to get back in the race as Jeff Brabham has taken over second place in front of Derek Daly. You know, it's been such a lovely day here in Portland, and speaking, well, it wasn't quite lovely last year when you were there, Larry. It was very, very hot. But coming up once again, the Budweiser Cleveland Grand Prix on ESPN.
Well, I tell you, that was a real exercise in perseverance. Any racing driver who was able to finish that race, and the first two to come to mind was the winner, Al Unser Sr., and a lady who ran that race, who has been struggling to get into IndyCar racing with a regular ride. Desiree Wilson was another one of the survivors, another one of the finishers of that race, and of course second place to Pete Halsmer, perhaps his finest performance ever behind the wheel of an IndyCar.
The Cleveland Grand Prix coming up live on ESPN as we pick up our leader right now.
There is Jeff Brabham, who is running in second position behind Al Unser Jr. And I've been watching Al Unser Jr. as well as Jeff Brabham the last couple of laps, and Al Unser Jr. has definitely gotten off the pace. And as a comment about that, we get slipped a piece of paper that says yes, the pace has slowed down to 1 minute 5 seconds, 1 minute 6 seconds, and Al Unser Jr. has definitely cut back on that torrid pace that he was setting about 15 or 20 laps ago, and right now he's looking to extend the life of his equipment for this race. They feel as though they are in command, but they've got to be careful of Brabham. Brabham has pretty much stayed on the throttle, and we'll try and get an interval for you in a few minutes here, but Jeff Brabham may be inching ahead, getting a little more closely to Al Unser Jr., but he's got a long ways to go. He's about 20 seconds behind, or about 1/3 of the lap around.
Jeff Brabham, as he looked in the pits before the race right now, in second spot. Jose Lee Garza back on the track as they get that car started. Brabham doing a great job at getting in front of Daly.
Well, what Jeff Brabham has done here is he has stabilized the interval between himself and Al Unser Jr. Jeff Brabham was very disappointed at Indianapolis this year. There you see Rick Mears going by. Rick is running very close to Jeff Brabham also on the field here, although Rick is off the number lap. Brabham was very disappointed at Indianapolis this year. He's one of the first drivers out of the race. Of course, he, like so many other people, hopes to do well. For him, he is on a team with the son. He is one of 2 sons on the same team, both of whom have fathers who were former world driving champions. Jeff was second. Look at a great speed shot. The car's reaching 170, 175 miles an hour down the long front stretch. Jeff Brabham was second at the other road course this year at Long Beach.
Jeff Brabham, the Australian who now lives in San Clemente, California, and we asked him about the new Radial tires and the heat on this course, and he gave us this answer. This course, what about the new tires now?
Well, they're round, you know, like the last one, so it doesn't really make much difference. It's good that we're trying something new, and Goodyear have got a good job in getting the radials out to all the teams, and it really doesn't make any difference competitive-wise because everybody has them, so it's all relative, you know.
All relative. relative, except when you get out on the race course sometimes. It doesn't get too relative.
No, it really
Michael
does.
Andretti.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And, you know, the other thing, I think the guys who have a lot of experience on the road courses, if we look at Danny Ungaias, one of his routine pit stops, we are at lap number 64, 65 now for Ungaias. He hopes to be able to go the rest of the way. He'll be cutting it a little thin, but that was his second and routine pit stop. I think a guy with a lot of road racing experience like Jeff Brabham is going to be at a real advantage with the radials. Another set of people who were with an advantage here with the new radial tires were the people who had raced on them before on the Formula One circuit. Danny Sullivan certainly proved that, and Derek Daly, now running in third position, make that, is another evidence of that.
It's hard to see it in his car right now, Danny Ungaias, but we saw it when he boarded the plane, the new slim trim Danny Ungaias. Hardly recognized.
Yeah, he's slimmed down a lot from the last couple of years, and Danny came to the 1984 season ready to race. Danny Ungaias has been in and out of IndyCar racing the past 3 or 4 years. Last year, he looked like he was ready to race, and there is Jeff Brabham, who slowed. It looks like it may have been perhaps an error coming out of turn number 6, looking for the long backstretch. Looked like he was working back up to speed. We'll watch for him coming down the backstretch, going back to the sweeper. Yeah, he's back up to speed. I think he may have just lost control momentarily.
Well, let's see if he does take it extra slow and go into the pits right here. He comes out of the sweeper, puts it down to the floor, and he's going on the straightaway. So whatever it was, he corrected.
I'll tell you, it's tough to be perfect for more than 100 laps. We're going to go 104 laps here on this road course. It's tough to be perfect every single lap all the way around, particularly on a day like this when the sun is beating right down on the cockpit.
It cost him because Derek Daly goes out in front now in second place around Brabham.
Jeff Brabham and Derek Daly have been waging kind of a personal duel for second position, and maybe a little bit of the pressure that Daly was applying was a factor as we go back up front and look at
Unser Jr. as he goes down the straightaway in front of the pit row. Unser Jr. is half flat left.
He's really having a good day as he's getting ready to put a lap on Jacques Villeneuve. Jacques Villeneuve, who is sort of emblematic of the Villeneuve style of driving. His older brother Gilles had it. It's a style that's wide open. They kind of drive with a playful abandon. That's a term that surfaced in Super V racing for us about 1.5 years ago. And Jacques is the kind of guy who refuses to be intimidated by any race car and any type of race track. And I'll tell you, when you're the leader of the race and you come up behind Jacques, that's one of the factors you're aware of. He's had some damage in the race car. You can see the right front.
He's coming out of the S's now into the back straightaway, and we see Brabham in the pits, getting fuel and tires on the left side as we anticipated.
Well, Jeff had gone back up to speed after that sudden slowing motion that we saw as he was entering the backstretch a couple of laps ago, and it was time for his pit stop. So this is in all likelihood his last planned pit stop with 67 laps down. That means that he is right on schedule, and Brabham should be able to go the rest of the distance on this load of fuel. They have 40 gallons. That's the maximum they're allowed. There you see him coming out right behind Unser Jr. He's now 1 lap down, but Unser Jr. has to pit one more time. They're allowed 40 gallons of fuel, and the rules say you got to go about 1.8 miles per gallon, and Brabham looks to be right on schedule.
Unser Jr. as he slips through. Chip Ganassi's motor is out, and we'll be back to watch more of Unser Jr. from the Portland 200 right after these important words.
In Portland, we are just concluding a scheduled pit stop for Unser Jr. They changed 3 tires, top off the fuel, having some trouble getting it back in gear, but he's underway.
Unser Jr. back on the course, and he really showed us that it's fairly warm out of that course as well, gulping down the water, but 3 tire changes in valuable time.
Well, something happened in that pit stop that might show up later in this race, Art. They changed 3 tires. It looked like they were ready to go, and then at the last second, they changed their mind and took the right front off and added it on. It added extra time onto the pit stop. They spent, I would estimate, 6 to 8 additional seconds on that pit stop because they were hesitant about the right front. Will that hurt them later in the race? I'll tell you, that could be a factor with Derek Daly and Jeff Brabham running relatively strong also at this stage.
Unser Jr., though, back on the track. We mentioned Chip Ganassi is out of the race right now. The cowling coming off of the car. Bad engine problems as well.
Unser Jr. is completed his final pit stop among the front 5 cars still on the lead lap. Teo Fabi has not stopped yet. We expect him to come in momentarily. Teo will be the temporary leader of this race until he stops for fuel, his final stop, and he's the last one among the leaders to pit, so we'll be watching for that to happen.
Derek Daly has a consistent ride all day long as he comes down the straightaway.
Well, right now, data speed scoring is showing Derek as being about 10 seconds behind Al Unser Jr., and that does figure to be proper because Al had a pretty good advantage over Derek before the pit stop. So Daly runs right now 3rd position in the race, but he's really gridded 2nd. Look at the overall performance of this race because Fabi has not stopped yet. 7th at Long Beach, his best finish in the 1984 season. He really, of course, expects to do well on the road courses, and he's very happy to be with this race team. The team has been reorganized the last couple of weeks. They fired some people, so hired some new people, and they're very pleased just to be here, and their driver's giving them a good ride here today.
He would certainly like his first win in his 12th start in IndyCar competition. I'm sure Derek Daly moving to the Indy-style cars after a very successful career in Formula 3 racing in Ireland. We asked him about his new car and how it was performing through the trials and getting ready for this race right before the race. Particularly challenged for your crew because it's a brand new one coming from all segments?
Yeah, we had a couple of management changes, so to speak, and I think it was probably for the best. Everybody gets on well now. We're making good headway, and I think we can look forward to a successful season.
And the successful season starting right now with that brand new car, Derek Daly's, running a very, very consistent race.
Well, Derek has certainly shown us that he has high capabilities, particularly on road courses. Remember the thrilling moment last year at Laguna Seca through the corkscrew. Looked like he was in position to challenge for the lead, and got a little bit out of shape and took Steve Chassis with him, but he's been fast in the road courses, and he's here in the States in IndyCar racing to stay for a while.
Larry, do you find that as CART expands the racing circuits all over the United States, it takes on more road racing circuits that more European drivers might come into IndyCar racing?
All right, I definitely think so as we look at Teo Fabi showing some evidence of that road racing influence. You see the Parliament sponsorship on his helmet. The success of guys like Teo Fabi and Derek Daly and Roberto Guerrero. There is Tom Sneva with some fuel burning out apparently of the exhaust header. A little bit of flame coming out of that car as he sits in the pit area. He pulls away apparently with no ill effects from that. But as we look at Sneva and Fabi come out of the pit area, the success of people like Fabi and Roberto Guerrero is bound to attract more Formula One drivers, more Europeans. We saw Emerson Fittipaldi come over here briefly. Giacomelli was at Indianapolis. The program just didn't work out for him, but yeah, it's going to be interesting and maybe a little distressing to a lot of die-hard oval track race fans in the States, but I think it's a sign of the times.
Tom Sneva, after that wild jet ride for the IROC race, coming back and doing a yeoman effort.
Yeah, you know, he's like first in class right now. He's 6th in the race. He's 1 lap down, and he leads all the people who are not on the lead lap. We have 5 cars in the lead lap. They are Al Unser Jr., Derek Daly, Jeff Brabham, Teo Fabi, and Bobby Rahal, despite making extra pit stops, has been able to hold on to the lead lap, and then Sneva runs in 6th, but 1 lap down to the 5 guys who are on the lead lap.
Sneva holding on Fabi right there. Sneva from Paradise Valley, Arizona right now is his residence. But of course, he has many, many fans from his hometown of Spokane, Washington, where he was raised.
It's been a great weekend for automobile racing. We hope you had a chance to see the Formula One races. One of the Formula One people, Teo Fabi, I suppose he wouldn't mind being called that. He has a ride this year after all. The Formula One race was today earlier on ESPN, won by Nelson Piquet. In the Brabham, he started on the pole and led the entire race. His first win for 1984 in Grand National Stock Car Racing at Michigan International Speedway. Congratulations to Bill Elliott. Win number 2 of his career, and the IROC race was won by Neil Bonnet.
Out of the race now. A lot of fans enjoying this fine weather here in Portland, but these gentlemen are not enjoying it. Al Unser Sr., Pepe Romero, Mario Andretti, Scott Brayton, Danny Sullivan, Pete Halsmer, and Stan Fox. Those cars out of the race along with Roberto Guerrero, Dick Simon, and Jose La Garza. Let's add Chip Ganassi to that list, of course, as he is just retired. Chip Ganassi with engine problems. So the Portland 200 continues under sunny skies. And we'll be back with more exciting kart action right after this. Indycar race here in Portland, Oregon. The Portland 200 not only draws fans from Portland, but also all over the Northwest, and bus from Salem, Oregon, the capital of Oregon, coming up to see this fine race. The Portland 200. Don't forget now, Houston's record-breaking backfield gambles for more glory, live on ESPN Monday, June 25th. Houston versus Memphis Showboats. That's on Monday the 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. Let's take a look now at the PPG point standings. Coming into this race, it was Tom Sneva with 2 wins in the second place, earning 58 points. Michael Andretti next. Rick Mears, number 3 on the list. Mario Andretti 4th. Al Unser Sr. 5th. But we see Unser and many more out of this particular race. Picking up the leader, Al Unser Jr.
Coming into today's race, Michael Andretti was the only driver to have finished all 4 of the IndyCar races. By the way, the top 10 rounding him out, Holmes was 6th, on Gaia 7th. These are points. Jeff Brabham and Roberto Gallardo tied for 8th, and Al Unser Jr. That man right there, he's 10th position in the point standings, and boy, would he like to win today on Father's Day. He's had so many opportunities, so many races that he deserved to win, and there are a lot of people that got to be pulling for this 22-year-old today.
On lap 76, he's averaging a speed of 104.893 miles an hour. Al Unser Jr., the leader of the Portland 200.
And he is running and averaging about 1 1/2 seconds a lap faster than the second position, Derek Daly. So despite the fact that he's off the pace he was setting a few laps ago, he is still by far and away the fastest car on the track. A couple of other pit note updates. Number 4, Tom Sneva, the leading car on the list of those who are 1 lap out, and stop-and-go penalty for running over an air hose. It allows Denny and Gaius to get around him. They could be battling for 6th position before this race is over. And there was a black flag, or rather car number 40, no black flag, but the report was they went through 2 spark boxes this weekend, and that's a total of 4 over the last 3 races. So problems with the spark box kit in the Patrick team.
Jim Ganassi having more problems. Derek Daly, as you see him coming toward us now.
And that is Jeff Brabham. Brabham and Daly are fixing to do battle, you know, for the runner-up position. We are more than 3/4 of the way through this race. We're on lap number 77. So we've got 104 laps to go in this one. My edition is not like it used to be when I was in grade school. About 27 laps or so to go. And Jeff Brabham, with the radios and the pit boards combined, you best be assured that he knows exactly where he is. And he's fixing to go after 2nd place.
Jeff Brabham also wants to be right there in case something should happen to Al Unser Jr., the leader here in the Portland 200.
And you know, Art, the way attrition has been in this race, you've got to be thinking about that at the front of your mind, because so many unexpected things have happened. Nobody expected this race to be a particular endurance contest. 200 miles, a reasonable distance on a road course. We expected the weather to be pleasant and a little bit on the cool side, but it's been a real summer day.
Let's hear from the team manager, Huey Absalon, down in the pit area. Gary Lee will be going to him shortly. Gary?
It is a very loose atmosphere down here. Obviously, you guys are very pumped up at this point in the race, but however, we have seen Al Unser Jr. in this position before.
It's true. My hands are shaking now.
But obviously, everything is okay with the tire wear, the fuel consumption?
Yeah, I think we're, you know, if everything goes like it is now, we'll be okay.
This is what you might call conservative optimism.
Yeah, like I said, we've been here before.
Some veterans say he's overdue.
Yeah, he's definitely overdue.
A man of few words, Huey Absalom.
Well, Gary, I'll tell you, mathematically, if you look at the statistics and the fuel consumption chart up to this point in the race, he's got just enough. So all the signs certainly do look good at this point. To give you an idea of the dominance of 3 drivers in the season prior to today, Al Unser Jr. had led the 5th highest number of laps in the 1984 season. He had only led 4 laps prior to today. Tom Sneva had led 294, Rick Mears 197, and Mario Andretti 148. Al Unser Jr. was 5th with 4 laps, and sandwiched there in the middle with 4th position with 16 leading laps was Teo Fabi. But Al Unser Jr. has really done himself proud today in terms of laps up front, and he'll move up in those standings.
The attrition has been heavy here at the Portland 200. And Ray Hall is coming, it looks like, trying to unbuckle there. He's slowing down. It looks like he's got some definite problems, Larry.
Well, it's been fuel problems that have plagued Bobby Rahal all day. He is not right now coasting into the pit area. That's a place on the back side of the course as he pulls up next to Al Unser Jr. Al Unser Sr. The parking lot attendant comes up and he'll probably get a ticket and have to pay a couple bucks here to get out of here before the day is over. But that's a place that you don't really want to have to stop.
Looks like Ray Hall does want to continue, though, as he's talking with the track assistant there. More attrition.
There is that contest for second place. Derek Daly and Jeff Brabham. And here comes Brabham. Brabham is ready to make his move, but he thinks the better of it. He tucks back in behind Daly, tries to pick up on the draft, takes a look down to the inside, and gets out of the throttle for the chicane.
They're still averaging 105.011 miles an hour with only 23 laps to go.
Derek Daly, Jeff Brabham, neither one of them has ever won an IndyCar race, nor has the leader of this race, Al Unser Jr. In fourth position, the only other car on the lead lap is Teo Fabi. As we go back and look at Bobby Rahal, it was a valiant effort for Bobby. Trying to look and see exactly. Oh, he's getting a drink of water there. Bobby Rahal, the pause that refreshes amidst all the disappointment. Bobby Rahal will have to sit this one out on the backside of the course.
Brabham making his move, and he slips by. Oh, super battle for second place now. Al Unser Jr. is running at 104s, and Daly and Brabham in the 105s. And we saw him get around. Let's go once again to one of those little bits that ESPN does in cooperation with Cart Trackback.
In seasons past, the air jack coupler has been on top of the race car behind the roll bar. Now, for a more efficient pit stop, the coupler has been moved to under the rear wing, with the funnel device allowing for the hose to be funneled in. And now the air hose is behind the race car, not draped over the side pod.
The air hose, another innovation as they hit the road course circuit. On this Father's Day, we'll be back with more racing at its best from Portland International Raceway after this. Past Derek Daly, and this is the orders. We come back to action for the Portland 200. Al Unser Jr., Jeff Brabham, Derek Daly, Teo Fabi, and Danny Ngaius in the fifth spot. You see 82 laps of the 104 completed, so we're getting now down to some hard thinking times.
I'll bet you Brabham will trade the mistake on the graphics for being and having the position. He worked so hard to get around Derek Daly, and you know, he worked him like a professional. He knew about how much time he had left in the race. He really wasn't in a hurry. At this point, it doesn't look like, if the race unfolds as it is right now, that either one of them is going to be able to catch Al Unser Jr. unless something starts to go wrong with that race car. So Jeff bided his time, made a very professional move, and kind of propelled himself into second position. Jeff's having a great day. A great day for all the guys in the first 5 positions, all people who really needed to have a good day, and it's coming at the right time. In order, Al Unser Jr., Jeff Brabham, Derek Daly, Teo Fabi, and Danny Ngaius.
Valuable points, valuable money at stake for that second spot, plus being in good position should something happen to that car right there. Al Unser Jr., as he comes out of the sweep and goes down the short straightaway in front of the pit area.
It has been a very clean race. A couple of people have had off-course excursions. One of them was the white car that just went by in front of Al Unser Jr., that being, of course, Jose Garza. But no major incidents of report. Lots of attrition, more than what we expected, but the attrition rate has slowed down the last 20 or 30 green flag laps. We have never had to go to a all conditions yellow. There have been a couple of local yellows from time to time, but by and large, a fast sprint race that's really taken its toll on the equipment. But not to take away from Al Unser Jr., he's been hard in the top 3 or 4 all day, and I think he may have had a nice solid third place behind the Lolas had they been able to go all day long.
And he's been running smooth and still is at 105.118 miles an hour per lap right now. The Coors Light Special, the silver bullet of Al Unser Jr. Trailing Garza right now. They're coming through the sweep area. That's turns 8 and 9 as they head down the short front straightaway.
Michael Andretti, you saw just a quick glimpse of him there on the left-hand side of the screen, is back on the race course, but not running nearly the speed that he was earlier. Mike's hoping to maintain that streak of being the only driver. There he is, the blue and yellow car in the background, being the only driver to finish every race on the trail. And he has been very open about his interest in the championship, and that's why the team has worked so hard today, despite all the problems that they have had. And there is Michael, to stay out on the race course and get some valuable points. He wants to be champion bad. I'm sure he's disappointed right now, but like the trooper that he is, he's staying out there. They're out there in the hot sun here, trying to rack up yet another finish on the IndyCar trail. Michael Andretti.
Like the complete game in baseball, I think, Larry. The athlete, the true athlete, the champion wants to finish.
So you're also getting another display here of Unser Jr., how they're trying to conserve. He took about a lap and a half to get around Jose Garza. He's running much quicker than Jose, but he knows that he's really under no pressure right now, and the only thing he is fighting is the elements. He is not fighting any other competitor on the racetrack. It's the elements, it's the equipment, it's the heat. That is the only thing right now that stands behind, or between rather, Unser Jr. and victory. There he is coming down the 2,700-foot front stretch here, 165, 170 miles an hour. He's slow for the chicane. Let's watch and see just how far ahead he is of the second and third running, Jeff Brabham and Derek Daly, who are on the track together. They're yellow, remember?
We're waiting for the yellow cars to come into our picture, and there it is. Jeff Brabham and Derek Daly. That's Brabham in the number 2 spot behind Unser Jr. Unser Jr. with a comfortable lead as Brabham goes through that chicane. Now, the chicane was originally built there to try to slow down the cars before they got into these steep ascents.
Well, the driver said that certainly it does slow you down. You can't flat-foot it all the way to turn number 1, but they were able to go through the chicane much more quickly than what they really anticipated. It's almost impossible, however, to pass there, but the braking wasn't as severe as they thought it might have to be going through the chicane.
Expected here in Portland, Oregon as well, as they've had perfect weather for all the trials, and the teams came in about Wednesday to start preparing for this road circuit course. Boy, they went through the spring for 2 days.
Yeah, they sure did. A lot of experimenting going on until they really found the right setups, the new tires, the new racetrack, the new pavement, all those factors kind of collapsed into the laps of the crew chiefs, and there's a lot of work and thrashing going on. But you know how a race car is. It's very temperamental, and you can do the exact same thing to the same race car on the same race track 2 days in a row, and the car can seem completely different on both of those days.
Gary Lee has some ideas on fuel consumption. Gary?
Well, right now, that is the concern in the Craco Car Stereo team right now. Jeff Brabham may not have enough fuel to go the distance. They pitted at lap 64. Their first calculation would indicate because of fuel consumption, they may be 1 lap short. So now the question is, do we bring him in? Do we top off the fuel? Do we leave him out and take a chance that he may not have enough fuel to go the distance? That's what they're calculating right now.
So it's not only the driver that has to do the thinking and the work, that's for sure. The crews have to help determine about that fuel consumption problem. Here's our leader once again, Unser Jr., and a substantial lead it is. There's lots more to see at the Portland 200 in Portland, Oregon. We'll be back after these messages. In the 200-mile race here in Portland, Oregon. Don't forget, ESPN revs up for another outstanding season of auto racing and bringing you a weekly comprehensive racing show, ESPN's Speed Week. 7:30 p.m. on Thursdays, and Larry, an intricate part of that particular show.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun with that, Art. We really are. Wrapping up all the results from what happened last week. And, of course, this week on Speed Week, we'll have the highlights of this race, plus everything else that happened here at Portland this weekend. There was a Trans Am race, a Super V race, and we hope you had an opportunity to see the Formula One race earlier today, and we'll cover that in detail also, plus the top stories from the world of stock car racing. We're all going to celebrate with Bill Elliott for win number 2. A lot of folks across this land very happy to have Bill Elliott in the winner's circle at a Grand National Stock Car race. So join us Thursday night.
I'll be anxious once again to see the highlights of this race as well as we take a look at the top 5 right now. Unser Jr. is on top. Jeff Brabham second. Derek Daly a tight third. Teo Fabi and Danny Engaias. Now Engaias is off to a terrific start really here in 1984 after really having a hard time of it the past couple of years. And, of course, very little sleep because he participated in the IROC race on Saturday.
Yeah, he sure did. He made that transcontinental flight a couple of times. There's Danny coming in for a late race pit stop. Apparently their fuel not measuring out quite the way they had hoped for it to. Danny gesturing wildly. He's ready to get back out on the racetrack. He knows that he is battling with Tom Sneva as he drag strips out of the pit area. Danny is battling with Tom Sneva to be the man who comes across the finish line first among all those guys who was 1 lap down. Sneva had to make an extra pit stop, so these guys may be kind of in tandem, sort of in rhythm now. They both had to make one extra stop. Danny apparently for fuel, and Sneva was black flagged because he ran over a hose.
And Bettenhausen survives after some damage even before the race got underway officially.
Well, Gary was drilled in the tail by one of the rookie drivers here this weekend, Pepe Romero out of Miami. They have repaired the rear wing on the race car, and Gary continues to experiment in this unripened yellow car. Now, I know it looks like it's green to those of you at home, but we asked Gary about the color, and it is unripened yellow, so we want to set that straight. Gary has put that additional wing on this brand new March race car that the team has put together for him. And the wing on the back, by the way, is off of an old Lightning race car. Gary has been doing a lot of experimenting on his own, and he feels as though he is potentially onto something to get just a few more miles an hour and some more downforce out of this March car.
Here's Danny Ungeis in a black car getting around Gordon Johncock. There's some veterans right in a row there, Johncock, Sneva, and Bettenhausen. But Danny Ungeis leads them through the chicane right now. He only has 6 victories on the Indycar circuit. 5 of those back in 1978. But this year, we saw already the graphic that showed him last race in Milwaukee taking a 5th, but he also had a top 10 finish, getting a 9th spot at the Indy 500. So the hard charger is off to a good start, hoping for a good finish here at the Portland 200.
So I talk about the old guard that we alluded to at the top of the show on Gaius, Sneva, and Johncock there, 1, 2, 3 on the track. There's a scene that maybe 2 or 3 years ago on any other IndyCar race, we probably would have been looking at positions 1, 2, and 3.
But right now, we've got young Brabham in 2nd place and Al Unser Jr. in 1st with 10 laps. 10 laps to go. Let's go down to Gary. He's got the owner of the Craco car aboard.
Cranes to follow up on the fuel situation. It's now nail-biting time in the Craco crew.
It's the closest we've been. It's a strong possibility. We're now in 3rd place. If we make a pit stop, of course, you won't have a chance. We may leave him out. We won't know for another 3 or 4 laps. There's only about 16 seconds between us and 1st place.
What has been the big difference in fuel consumption? Has he turned the boost up?
Not really. We're just not getting the fuel we should be getting on the lap. And every lap, of course, is critical at this point.
Matter of waiting.
Matter of waiting a few more seconds.
A few more seconds, precious seconds, as Derek Daly starts to slow down on our racetrack now. The attrition has been phenomenal. Those pits have been very, very busy for a 200-mile race.
Well, about a lap ago, Jeff Brabham appeared to be picking up ground on Al Unser Jr. Despite the question of fuel, I think Jeff Brabham would really like to go for victory here. And just as Jeff Brabham started to pick up speed, as we see Teo Fabi now moving in on Derek Daly, Daly has definitely slowed, and Fabi has moved into 3rd position. Teo Fabi has taken over 3rd position from a slowing Derek Daly, picking up in the story up front. As Brabham began to move in on Al Unser Jr., apparently they radioed Al Unser Jr. of this phenomenon, and now Al Unser Jr. has accelerated. So Brabham is making Al Unser Jr. go faster, and Teo Fabi is probably beginning to make both Brabham and Al Unser Jr. also go faster because he's making a move now.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the problem actually is. Teo Fabi has been in a conservative position all race long. Very steady, though. Always performing well and staying out of trouble.
There is Fabi coming down the long front stretch, followed by Derek Daly. A couple of the immigrants from Formula One racing who now run 3rd and 4th in this race. And what looked to be a routine IndyCar race before the day began has turned into a real slugfest, and it's a slugfest against the elements. There's been some good racing, but the real big problem has been making the cars finish. This racetrack has taken a beating on the equipment that I don't really think that people anticipated.
Fabi out of the S's as our leader. Al Unser Jr. just crosses the start-finish line. There you see Fabi. Fabi maneuvering masterfully now. He wants to get in good position in case something should happen to the front car.
Artie is running with as much confidence, I will tell you, that we have seen all day from him.
And so our leader is still Al Unser Jr., as we'll be right back with more action from the Portland 200 after these messages. There you see Al Unser Jr. now as he goes through the chicane into the S-turns. Al Unser Jr. now out in front. And there's Ungeis slowing down. He's in 5th place currently, Larry.
And Danny had come in a few laps ago. We thought it was for a fuel stop. but I must admit it was a little premature if it was a final fuel stop. You can see Danny checking the mirrors as he comes down the front stretch. He knows that he's running slower than the majority of the other cars still on the track, and he's just making a sportsmanship-like gesture there that if he's in somebody's way, he probably would have taken the... You think back to 1952 when Troy Ruttman won the Indianapolis 500, and I guess the most commonly accepted age for Troy Ruttman when he won that race was 22, and Unser Jr. has duplicated that feat. And as we mentioned, as he came around the sweeper, you got to believe that's going to be the first.